My parents stole and sold my laptop for my sister's shopping spree on my birthday. But when I found my 21st birthday began with my father stealing my laptop and ended with me discovering I was actually wealthy. The hours in between contained enough betrayal, revelation, and righteous fury to fill a reality TV season. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to that morning. The morning I finally understood that in the Thompson family hierarchy, I would always be somewhere below the garden furniture in terms of consideration and respect. I woke up to an empty house and zero birthday acknowledgement. No cards on the kitchen counter. No happy birthday text messages. Not even the half-hearted post-it note my mother sometimes remembered to stick to the refrigerator. Just silence and the lingering smell of the pancakes they'd made for my sister Haley's breakfast before they left to take her shopping, a monthly tradition that never included me. I wasn't surprised. Exactly. Disappointment requires expectations, and I'd abandoned those years ago. But it was my 21st birthday, the milestone one, and some tiny, optimistic part of me had hoped they might remember. I was sipping coffee and scrolling through the handful of social media birthday wishes from distant acquaintances when my phone dinged with a text from my father. Need you to e-transfer $3,200 to Haley's account today. Her tuition installment is due. No happy birthday, no please, just a demand for money I didn't have, for a sister who had never worked a day in her life. Before I could respond, a second message appeared. Also sold your laptop and those fancy headphones for $800. Left the cash on your dresser. You can get something cheaper that works fine for school. My stomach dropped. My MacBook Pro, purchased with money from 3 simultaneous part-time jobs, containing all my architectural design projects for my degree, was gone. So were my noise-canceling headphones that I needed to focus in our chaotic house. Sold without my permission while I slept. As I raced upstairs to confirm this nightmare, a third text arrived. Your sister saw a tablet she needs for her social media management course. They're holding it until 5 p.m. today. Use the laptop money plus whatever else you need to add and go pick it up. Best Buy on Houston Street. I stared at my empty desk, then at the pitiful stack of $20 bills on my dresser, nowhere near the value of what had been taken. And now I was expected to supplement this theft with more of my own money, to buy Haley yet another device she would likely abandon within weeks. My name is Jade Thompson. I'm 21 years old. And that was the moment I finally realized I needed to escape my family before they bled me completely dry financially, emotionally, and spiritually. But escaping would require something I'd never done before: standing up for myself and forcing them to see exactly what they'd done to me. And what happened next? Well, let's just say revenge doesn't always need to be planned. Sometimes it's simply the natural consequence of finally speaking your truth. To understand why my parents' behavior felt like a gut punch rather than an isolated incident, you need to know about the Thompson family dynamic. I'm the oldest of 2 daughters, born to Martin and Diana Thompson of Westlake Heights, a solidly upper-middle-class suburb where appearance is everything and family prestige matters more than actual happiness. From the outside, we looked picture-perfect: dad, a financial advisor; mom, a part-time interior designer who mostly spent her time on charity committees; Haley, the vivacious high school cheerleader turned aspiring social media influencer; and me, the quiet, studious one with the scholarship to the State University's architecture program. What most people didn't see was the stark difference in how we were treated. Haley's childhood bedroom looked like a boutique hotel suite, complete with an ensuite bathroom and walk-in closet my father had specially constructed. My room was the converted attic with sloped ceilings so low I couldn't stand upright in half the space. Haley received a brand new car on her 16th birthday, a white Jeep Wrangler with custom pink details. For my 16th, I got a bus pass and a reminder that responsibility builds character. When Haley needed braces, she went to the premier orthodontist who offered invisible aligners. When I needed them, I was told to be thankful for the basic metal ones covered by insurance, and maybe smile with your lips closed for photos. This pattern continued into our college years. Haley attended the expensive private university 40 minutes away. living at home to save money, though the savings clearly didn't apply to her extensive wardrobe, regular salon visits, or frequent weekend trips with friends. Meanwhile, I was expected to maintain my scholarship, work multiple jobs, pay rent to my parents, and still somehow contribute to household expenses because we're all in this together. The inequality was so normalized that I rarely questioned it anymore. When relatives commented on the disparity, my parents had ready explanations. Haley had different needs. She was more sensitive. She struggled more with confidence, and therefore needed more tangible support. I was the capable one. I was naturally independent. I didn't care about material things anyway. All code for Haley matters more. Haley's happiness is the priority. Jade will be fine with whatever scraps of attention and resources we toss her way. And I had been fine, or at least, I'd convinced myself I was fine. I'd accepted my role as the family afterthought, the reliable workhorse who would never complain, never demand, never expect the consideration that was automatically given to my sister. But something about turning 21, about legally, officially, undeniably being an adult while simultaneously having my property stolen and being commanded to fork over money I didn't have. Something about that combination finally broke through my carefully constructed acceptance. After confirming that my laptop and headphones were indeed gone, I sat on my bed, hands shaking, trying to figure out what to do. The practical part of my brain was already calculating how many extra shifts I'd need to replace my essential equipment. The emotional part was curled in a ball, silently screaming. I called my best friend Jenny. "Happy birthday," she chirped, then immediately sensed my mood. "What's wrong?" "Please tell me they at least remembered this year." "They remembered to steal my laptop," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "and to demand $3,200 for Haley's tuition. Oh, and to instruct me to buy her the latest iPad model." Jenny's outraged expletives were exactly what I needed to hear. Unlike everyone else in my life, she had never bought into the narrative that the way my family treated me was normal or acceptable. "Jade, this is financial abuse," she said after exhausting her vocabulary of creative curses. "And theft. Your name was on those purchases, not theirs." "I know, but no buts. You're 21 today. You're a legal adult in every possible way. This is the universe sending you a message that it's time to get out of that house before they steal your kidneys while you sleep." I laughed despite everything. Where would I go? My savings are pathetic because they keep borrowing from my account. "My cousin's roommate just moved out," Jenny said without hesitation. "It's a tiny room in a not great apartment, but it's $450 a month, utilities included. I've been saving the information for you just in case." "Just in case what?" "Just in case you finally realized you deserve better than being your family's personal doormat." I glanced around my cramped attic bedroom with its secondhand furniture and water stain on the ceiling from the leak my father had promised to fix 3 years ago. I thought about the fancy espresso machine my parents had bought Haley last week because she'd mentioned enjoying lattes. I thought about the fact that no one had even texted me a basic happy birthday message. "Text me the address," I said. "I'll be there in an hour to look at it." The apartment was exactly as advertised, tiny, in a neighborhood that had seen better days, with questionable plumbing and neighbors who seemed to believe 3 a.m. was the ideal time to practice their dubstep routines. The bedroom barely fit a twin bed and a dresser, with a closet so small it would give a minimalist pause. It was perfect because it would be mine. "I'll take it," I told Crystal, Jenny's cousin, before I'd even finished the tour. "Don't you want to think about it?" she asked, eyeing me worriedly. "I've had 21 years to think about it," I replied. Back at my parents' house, I began the careful process of extracting myself. First, I transferred my meager remaining savings, $126.42, to a new account at a different bank. My parents had always insisted on having access to my original account in case of emergency, which apparently included Haley's spontaneous weekend trips and my mother's impulse furniture purchases. Next, I packed only what was unequivocally mine: clothes I'd purchased myself, books, my architecture models and portfolios, and the few sentimental items I'd accumulated over the years, It all fit in my 10-year-old Honda Civic, another stark contrast to Haley's luxury vehicle, but one I was now grateful for. At least I had independent transportation. I was loading the final box when my parents' Mercedes pulled into the driveway, followed by Haley's Jeep. They spilled out, arms laden with shopping bags, laughing about something. They froze when they saw me. "What are you doing?" my mother asked, her voice sharp with suspicion rather than concern. "Moving out," I said simply. "Don't be ridiculous," my father scoffed. "Where would you go? What about your sister's tuition payment?" Of course, that was his first concern. "I'm not paying Haley's tuition," I said, "and I'm not buying her a tablet. In fact, I'm not giving this family another cent." Haley's perfectly glossed mouth dropped open. "But Daddy said you would. The school will drop me from my classes." "Then maybe Daddy should pay for them himself," I suggested, considering he's been hiding money for years. That was a shot in the dark and intuitive leap based on scattered observations over the years. My father's expression confirmed I'd hit pay dirt. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he blustered, but his left eye twitched his tail when he was lying. "We'll discuss this inside," my mother hissed, glancing nervously at the neighbors' windows. Heaven forbid anyone witness a crack in the Thompson family facade. "There's nothing to discuss," I said, closing my trunk. "I've spent years watching you give Haley everything while I worked myself to exhaustion just to afford basic necessities. I've handed over thousands of dollars that somehow never got repaid. And today, you stole my property and expected me to be grateful for the privilege of being robbed. I'm done. After everything we've done for you," my father began, his face reddening. "What exactly have you done for me lately? Dad, name one thing in the past 5 years that wasn't actually me doing something for you." My mother stepped forward, her voice taking on the saccharine tone she used when manipulating people at her charity events. "Honey, you're upset. It's your birthday. You're feeling emotional. Let's go inside. Have some cake." "You remembered it's my birthday." I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped me. That's new. Haley at least had the grace to look embarrassed. "I got you something," she offered, digging through one of her shopping bags to produce a small package hastily wrapped in tissue paper from the store. I accepted it automatically, then peeked inside a keychain with a charm that said "Little Sis." "I'm older than you," I said flatly. "Oh," she blinked. "I thought, aren't I? I always assumed." And there it was, the perfect encapsulation of my existence in this family. Even the basic fact of my birth order had been obscured by Haley's centrality in all things. "Goodbye," I said, getting into my car. "Don't contact me about money again, and Dad, I expect repayment for my laptop and headphones by the end of the month. Or I'll be filing a police report for theft." His face turned purple. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I replied, and drove away from the house I'd never again call home. The first night in my new apartment, I sat cross-legged on my hastily purchased air mattress and made a list titled, "The Thompson Family Debt to Jade." Under this dramatic heading, I methodically documented every unauthorized withdrawal from my account, every loan that was never repaid, every instance of financial exploitation I could remember. The grand total just from the past 3 years came to $28,476.31. A normal person might have been discouraged by this figure, seeing it as money irretrievably lost. But I was an architecture student. I'd spent years learning to see not just what existed, but what could be built from the available materials. And something about seeing that number in black and white made me determined to reconstruct my life from the foundation up. The next morning, my architecture professor, who had always shown more parental concern than my actual parents, listened to an abbreviated version of my situation and immediately connected me with the university's legal aid services. "What happened to you isn't just unfair," she said, her kind eyes serious behind cat eye glasses. "It's potentially illegal, especially if your parents have been mismanaging money that was technically yours." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Many families in your parents' income bracket set up trust funds or UTEMA accounts for their children. If your parents had access to money that was legally designated for your education or well-being, but used it for other purposes, that's misappropriation." The idea seemed far-fetched. Surely if I had a trust fund, I'd know about it. But then again, I'd seen my father's reaction when I'd mentioned hidden money. The Student Legal Services Office connected me with Mr. Vega, a patient attorney who specialized in financial cases. After hearing my story, he asked for my social security number and my parents' full names. "Let me run a few searches," he said. "Sometimes these accounts leave paper trails even when they're being deliberately obscured." 3 days later, he called me back. "Jade, how familiar are you with uniform transfers to Minors Act accounts?" "Not at all," I admitted. "They're accounts set up by adults, often parents or grandparents, to hold money or other assets for minors until they reach adulthood. The adult serves as custodian, managing the assets until the minor reaches the age of majority, which varies by state." My heart began to race. "And in our state—" "21, he said significantly, "which you just turned." The room seemed to spin slightly. "Are you saying I have one of these accounts?" "You have two," he confirmed. "One established by your maternal grandparents when you were born, and another set up by your paternal grandmother when you were 10. Together, they currently hold approximately $167,000. I nearly dropped the phone. "That's impossible. I've been working 3 jobs to afford textbooks. My parents would have told me if I had that kind of money." "Not necessarily. As custodian, your father was legally obligated to manage these funds for your benefit, but he wasn't required to tell you about them until you reached 21. However," his voice grew serious, "if he's been using these funds for purposes other than your direct benefit, such as general household expenses or your sister's needs, that would constitute a breach of fiduciary duty." My mind flashed to all the times my parents had claimed they couldn't afford things for me while lavishing Haley with expensive gifts, to the cramped attic bedroom while Haley enjoyed a custom suite, to the basic metal braces while Haley got premium orthodontic care. "How do I find out if he's been misusing the funds?" "We request account statements and transaction histories," Mr. Vega explained. "If we can demonstrate misappropriation, we can pursue legal action to recover those funds." I took a deep breath. "And how do I get access to what's left?" "That's the simpler part," he said. "Since you're now 21, you can request immediate transfer of the remaining assets to your control. The custodianship legally ended on your birthday." My birthday. The day my father had been so desperate for me to hand over money for Haley's tuition. The day he'd sold my laptop without permission. It wasn't a coincidence. He'd known I was about to discover the truth. The legal paperwork went out the following day, formal notification to the financial institutions holding my UTMA accounts that I was claiming my assets, and a separate letter to my father demanding a complete accounting of all transactions from those accounts during his custodianship. 3 days of silence followed. Then my phone exploded with calls and texts from my entire family. I ignored them all, focusing instead on replacing my laptop thanks to an emergency technology grant my professor helped me secure and settling into my new apartment. On day 4, my father showed up at my door. "How did you find me?" I asked, not inviting him in. "Your mother called every apartment complex in a 10-mile radius of your school," he said, as if this stalking behavior was perfectly normal. "We've been worried sick." "No, you've been worried about the money," I corrected, "and whether I'll make this public." His expression confirmed my suspicion. "There's been a misunderstanding," he began, using his financial advisor voice, the smooth, authoritative tone he employed with nervous clients. "Those accounts were family funds that I was managing for everyone's benefit." "That's not how UTMA accounts work," I replied, "and you know it. They were specifically designated for me, to be used exclusively for my benefit until I turned 21. "I'm your father," he said, as if that single fact invalidated all legal and ethical considerations. "I made decisions I thought were best for the family as a whole, like using my education fund to build Haley a custom bedroom suite, or buy her a luxury car while I took the bus, or pay for her private university tuition while I worked 3 jobs to afford textbooks for the program I got into on scholarship." He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "The distribution of resources in a family is complex." "It's not complex at all," I interrupted. "You favored Haley, you always have, and you used money that was legally mine to do it." "That's a serious accusation," he said, voice hardening. "It's not an accusation, it's a fact, and I have a lawyer who's very interested in examining exactly how you managed those accounts over the years." Fear flashed across his face, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him in this conversation. "You'd sue your own family." "You stole from your own daughter," I countered. For years, while making her feel like a burden for needing basic things like dental care and school supplies. We stood at an impasse. The power dynamic between us irrevocably shifted, for the first time in my life. I wasn't the supplicant, the one begging for scraps of attention or resources. I was the wronged party with legal recourse, and we both knew it. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "Everything that's rightfully mine," I said. The remaining balance of both UTMA accounts transferred to my control immediately, a full accounting of all transactions from those accounts during your custodianship, and repayment of any funds that were misappropriated for expenses not directly related to my education or well-being. "That's impossible," he sputtered. "We don't have that kind of money just sitting around." "Then I suggest you start liquidating assets," I replied. "Beginning with Haley's Jeep and your vacation property at Lake Conroe." His face turned an alarming shade of crimson. "You would ruin this family over money." "No, Dad. You already did that when you decided one daughter deserved everything and the other deserved nothing. I'm just setting it right." I closed the door on his stunned expression, then leaned against it, heart racing but resolve firm, for the first time in my life. I had stood up to my father not with shouting or drama, but with calm, factual statements of the wrong that had been done to me. It felt better than I ever could have imagined. The next 6 weeks were a whirlwind of legal correspondence, financial disclosures, and family drama. My mother left tearful voicemails about how I was tearing the family apart. Haley sent confused texts questioning why I was suddenly being so mean. Extended family members I rarely heard from suddenly had strong opinions about my greed and ingratitude. I responded to none of it, communicating exclusively through Mr. Vega, who proved worth every penny of his fee when the financial records finally arrived. The misappropriation was even more extensive than I'd imagined. My father had systematically diverted funds from my accounts to pay for Haley's private high school tuition, her car, her regular allowance, and even family vacations that I had often been left out of because someone needs to work, or someone needs to watch the house. Of the original $280,000 combined value of my two UTMA accounts, only $167,000 remained. The rest, $113,000, had been spent on expenses that clearly benefited others. "This is textbook breach of fiduciary duty," Mr. Vega said as we reviewed the documents together. "The custodian of a UTMA account has a legal obligation to manage the assets prudently and exclusively for the benefit of the minor. Your father clearly failed to do so." "So what happens now?" I asked. "We have two options. We can file a civil suit to recover the misappropriated funds, which would likely be a lengthy and expensive process, or we can use this evidence to negotiate a settlement that returns as much as possible without the need for court proceedings." I thought about it carefully. I wanted justice, but I also wanted to move forward with my life. And a protracted legal battle would mean staying entangled with my toxic family for months or years to come. "Let's try to settle," I decided, "but I won't accept pennies on the dollar. I want substantial recovery and a legal agreement preventing them from contacting me about money ever again." Mr. Vega nodded approvingly. "I think that's wise. Let's draft a settlement proposal." The negotiations took another month. My father initially blustered about family loyalty and threatened countersuits for defamation. My mother tried emotional blackmail, claiming the stress was affecting her health. But when Mr. Vega calmly pointed out that the evidence would be extremely damaging if made public, particularly to my father's reputation as a financial advisor, they began to take the matter seriously. In the end, we settled on the following terms. 1. Immediate transfer of the remaining $167,000 to accounts under my sole control. 2. A repayment plan for $85,000 of the misappropriated funds, secured by a lien on my parents' vacation property. 3. A legally binding agreement that they would not contact me regarding financial assistance for any reason. 4. Return of my stolen laptop and headphones, or their cash equivalent value. It wasn't everything I was owed, but it was enough to change my life completely. I moved from the tiny apartment to a modest but comfortable one-bedroom closer to campus. I replaced my ancient Honda with a reliable used Toyota. I bought a professional quality laptop and design software that enhanced my architecture projects. And most importantly, I set up a proper savings account, retirement fund, and budget that allowed me to cut back to just one part-time job, giving me time to actually enjoy being a college student for once. Yay! The family fallout was significant, as expected. Most relatives took my parents' side, accepting their vague explanations about Jade's unfortunate misunderstanding of family finances. A few cousins quietly reached out to ask what had really happened, then stayed in touch afterward, forming the beginning of a chosen family that would grow over time. Surprisingly, the most meaningful conversation came from Haley herself. 3 months after the settlement, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. "Hi," she said awkwardly when I opened the door. "Can I come in?" She looked different, less polished, more authentic somehow. Her designer clothes had been replaced with jeans and a simple sweater. Her usual perfect makeup was minimal. "Why?" I asked, not ready to welcome her automatically after years of hurt. "Because I owe you an apology," she said simply. "Several, actually." I considered for a moment, then stepped aside to let her in. She perched on the edge of my couch, hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I didn't know," she began. "About the accounts, the money, any of it. I assumed Mom and Dad were using their own money for my stuff." She looked up, eyes sincere. "That doesn't excuse anything, but I need you to know I wasn't actively stealing from you. I was just oblivious. Selfishly, stupidly oblivious." "And now?" I asked. "Now everything's different. Dad had to sell the lake house to pay you back. Mom actually got a full-time job because they can't afford the lifestyle anymore. And She paused. "I had to leave private university. I'm at community college now, working part-time at a coffee shop." There was no resentment in her voice, just a kind of wondering disbelief at her changed circumstances. "That must be an adjustment," I said neutrally. She laughed, a genuine sound without her usual performative quality. "The biggest adjustment is realizing how easy I had it before, and how hard you worked while I was just coasting on your effort without even knowing it." I didn't disagree. "The thing is," she continued, "I'm actually happier now. It's like I'm living in the real world for the first time, making my own money, even if it's not much. Meeting people who like me for me, not for my parents' money or my Instagram aesthetic." She took a deep breath. "But most of all, I miss my sister. The sister I never really got to know because I was too busy being the princess in the family narrative." Her words touched something in me I'd thought long buried, the childhood longing for a real sisterhood, for the kind of relationship I saw other siblings enjoying. "I can't promise anything," I said carefully. "There's a lot of hurt there, but maybe we can start with coffee sometime, as equals." Her smile was worth more than any designer handbag she'd ever flaunted. "I'd really like that." Over the next year, everything changed. With financial stability and newfound confidence, I flourished academically and personally. My architecture portfolio earned me an internship at a prestigious firm. I developed friendships based on mutual respect rather than utility. I even started dating someone who valued my ambition instead of trying to dim it. My relationship with my parents remained distant but civil, conducted primarily through occasional polite emails. They never apologized explicitly. But their behavior changed. No more demands, no more manipulation, no more treating me as less worthy than Haley. As for Haley herself, our cautious coffee dates gradually evolved into a genuine relationship, without the toxic dynamic created by our parents' favoritism. We discovered we actually had things in common: a dry sense of humor, a love of true crime podcasts, an appreciation for spicy food that neither of our parents could tolerate. "I used to be so jealous of you," she confessed one day as we shared Vietnamese takeout in my apartment. "Even in the middle of being spoiled rotten, I knew you had something I didn't." "What could you possibly have been jealous of?" I asked, genuinely confused. I was basically the family Cinderella minus the happy ending. "You had purpose," she said simply. "Direction. You knew what you wanted and you worked for it. I was just drifting on Mom and Dad's current, taking whatever they gave me without earning any of it." She twirled noodles around her chopsticks thoughtfully. "In a weird way, you forcing them to face what they did was the best thing that could have happened to me too. I needed to grow up, to learn I'm capable of more than just being someone's princess. I considered this as I munched on a spring roll. I never thought of it that way, I admitted. I was just trying to survive. And instead, you thrived, she said with admiration. You built something real out of the scraps they left you. Later, after she'd left, I thought about her words. I had built something real, not just financial security, but a life that reflected my values and priorities. I'd transformed from the family doormat to someone who understood her worth and insisted on being treated accordingly. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. I hadn't set out to hurt my parents or diminish Haley. I had simply drawn a boundary and said no more. And in doing so, I'd forced a reckoning that ultimately improved all our lives, even if the process was painful. My name is Jade Thompson. I'm 22 years old now. I spent the first 21 years of my life as the family afterthought, the reliable workhorse who was expected to sacrifice endlessly while receiving nothing in return. Today, I'm an architecture student with a promising future, a growing support network, and a relationship with my sister that's slowly healing based on equality rather than comparison. The money mattered, of course it did. It changed my material circumstances dramatically, but the real transformation wasn't financial, it was psychological. For the first time in my life, I understood that loving someone doesn't mean accepting mistreatment from them. That family obligation has limits, that I deserve the same consideration and respect I give to others. Some might call what I did revenge, but I see it differently. I simply removed myself from a toxic system and required accountability for tangible harms done to me. The fact that this action upended the entire family dynamic wasn't my goal. It was the inevitable result of injecting truth and consequences into a situation built on denial and exploitation. And if that's revenge? Well, it's the kind that comes with the sweetest possible outcome, a life rebuilt on my own terms, with relationships that enhance rather than deplete me. I've learned that sometimes. Standing up for yourself isn't about getting even, it's about getting free.